Hi, we are from Schumacher Studio. This is
Jiayue.
And this is Chundi.
and Min. We're presenting our project. We're presenting our project Virtual Bauhaus for the 21st century. When we talk about Virtual Bauhaus, we split it into two parts. Starting with virtual, which refer to virtual technologies that transform how we interact within the digital environment. Now there are tools that transform real human features into digital forms, such as scanning faces or uploading videos or pictures, making entry into virtual worlds faster and more seamless. These virtual technologies enrich our spatial experiences and serve as a platform to explore how digital environments can redefine social functionality. In our virtual Bauhaus, Bauhaus is not just a school, but a fundamental reference for its ambition to push the boundary of technological advancement and design methodologies. So how can we make the Bauhaus more accessible to everyone? We see our virtual Bauhaus as a commitment to extend the legacy of the Bauhaus. It prioritizes functionality within the virtual environment, enhancing knowledge accessibility. The enriched spatial experiences bring more people into the metaverse. Virtual technologies enable us to drive innovation, foster experimentation, and promote multidisciplinary learning for the future, while improving equality and equity in education. To emphasize these three core aims, we continued our research across three distinct assets, each contributing unique insights into these goals. The first asset is from the local location, acting as an additional support hub for the school. Virtual Bauhaus as our design research prototype, we choose the local location as our AA. The second is from the remote locations, center on multidisciplinary learning across different educational institutes. The third is the public assets, aimed at enhancing knowledge accessibility to improve equality and equity in education. We then divide our design research into three: dynamism, perception, and interaction. In dynamic virtual Bauhaus, we're introducing the organization of information and the space. By researching the core curriculum of the Bauhaus, we observe its division of knowledge into preliminary course, studio course, and master course. Each level has distinct goals. The Bauhaus strives to bring all together creative effort into one whole. In our design prototype, we are setting the disciplines as architecture and urban design, architecture-informed fashion design, and architecture-informed product design. Virtual Bauhaus strives to bring together all creative efforts into one whole. We retain this educational structure within, while adding a new layer of public accessibility. This includes a workshop designed to engage a broader audience. The Bauhaus demonstrates its commitment to public accessibility through diverse cultural activities, including theaters, lectures, poetry, reading, musical performance, and costume parties. To extend its legacy of public engagement, we draw inspiration from the dynamic and interactive principle of the Fun Palace by Cedric Price and John Littlewood in the 1960s. We categorize the functional spaces with an emphasis on the mobility and accessibility. Each asset introduces function spaces for both information input and output, which is teaching and learning spaces and exhibition space. The interaction method differs depending on whether the user is engaging with a more focused, immersive environment or a broader public access space. We explore the spatial organization by considering the connection between these three use assets. Virtual Bauhaus should be constantly changing instead of a very enclosed shape as strategy 1. Then we prefer to start with strategy 2, which has more potential for openness and change. The cloud structure is composed of fragmented pieces organized at different levels. Each functions differently. These pieces are dynamic, able to change in scale, shape, and tilt. When the tilt changes, the way people perceive space also changes. A flatter base creates a more cohesive environment, while adding the tilt clarifies the division between spaces.
And the third part is the elaboration of our phenomenology and semiology. Above phenomenology, there is Murray effect for fragment type and the light agent song for social type. About semiology, there is local and global for morphology. And to articulate the spaces, we did some research on phenomenology, starting with Murray effect and its principle from 2D and 3D. The Murray effect creates a visual interaction when two surfaces overlap, causing interference patterns. As each fragmented piece changes shape, the perception of the space shifts accordingly. By controlling the sectional shape of individual components and their collective arrangement, consider how elements like a wall made of sticks may create a Murray effect. The gap and the shape of the sections can also influence the intensity and quality of the effects. By adjusting these parameters, it can create different visual effects and varying complexity. And about light, we then combine the Murray effect with the effect of light and shadow, playing with number of light sources and the pattern of surfaces. In the virtual world, avatar don't need to have shadows, and the dynamic shadow can be customized to navigate our users. In the other way, if the shadows are static, we can make our ceiling dynamic. When entering a space, certain users, such as teachers, can trigger the transformation. The color gradients in the cloud represent the level of accessibility of different areas. Cooler colors signal public spaces, warmer colors indicate semi-private areas, and darker tones represent more private spaces. And when the spatial situation changes, the color dynamics change as well. For example, during an open day, the color blends more seamlessly, creating a more cohesive environment. The projections onto fragmented pieces create a dynamic visual presentation. Although the projection source is the same, the varying shapes and orientation of the fragmented pieces cause the visuals to change. And we use projection and its effects in lecture space. And we set up a number of agents to help users participate in Virtual Bauhaus. We define 3 types of agents. The first type is used as navigation agents. When an event starts, they go into the direction of its event, and users can follow them to find the activity they want to participate in easily. And the second type of agents can simulate social scenarios by forming crowds that signify ongoing activities. This perceptual cue enables users to intuitively understand what is happening based on the crowd's behavior and direction. The third type of agents is to assist users in understanding internal activities and events.
In exploring the realms of design and architecture.
Answering users' questions and helping to better understanding relative information. And about sound, we divided into 3 sound types: agents, environment, and situation sound.
I'd also like to ask you to elaborate on the theme of this exhibition, which is more than watching.
Japan's brother industries Kotitate, Ladidi, sponsored the competition.
Yeah, this is when users come together to talk. The closer you are, the clearer and louder the conversation can be heard. And here are the environmental sound, different among the 3 axes. It's the public area, and this one is the lecture hall area. And this is the studio area.
I was inspired for my architecture.
And there are some situations in our Virtual Bauhaus. When there are block boundaries, if you enter, you can hear the content of the internal discussion. And during the event, if you want to enter or listen to someone else's conversation, move closer to the person you are talking to. Both you and the person you are talking to will be prompt. And when you enter the exhibition, touching the exhibits, you can enter into the real scene of the exhibit. And this is an event start tone.
4, 3, 2, 1.
It's a bit funny to be at a conference.
Great.
Next part is about morphology. The morphology of architecture is defined by the logic of the spatial organization and the identification of the different disciplines. Virtual Bauhaus is accessible to 3 different levels of users, and therefore the space is divided into 3 sections. And the functional group for the public are exhibitions, auditorism. For the educational institutions, it's lecture hall and showcase area. For the architecture association, it's the studio part. A walkway connects to the outside virtual Bedford Square. This way is integrated into the public area. And the studio and the lecture hall are connected by a figure of 8 traffic flow. Eventually, the 3 function clusters or grouped together. After the function, we give 3 different disciplines different shape to increase identification. Architectural design take a rectangular space, function design a diamond-shaped space, and the product design a triangular space. The collaborative area between the 3 disciplines uses a blender of shapes, the red part. And the identification of the different disciplines will also be reflected in the cloud. The cloud consists of 5 levels of fragmented pieces, each with unique profiles contributing to the spatial dynamic. Oh, nothing happened. Okay. The relationship between shape and discipline is also reflected in the spatial form of the cloud. This is overall of our cloud. The next part is about interactive. We will start with digital and physical interface and interaction model. Okay, first, the individual information of each person accessing to the virtual Bauhaus was scanned in order to create the digital avatar. Yeah. Yeah. And we realized the real-time delivery of facial experience in our project. This means that users can communicate more effectively. And then we try to bring scenarios from the physical world into our project. We scan the set model that need to be used. After achieving the transformation from physical to digital, we build the user interface and try to restore some physical scenarios. This is the PC user's interface, where the user can create or join a server, during which the camera captures the user's face to create unique avatar. After that, the user can choose the area where they want to log in. In this case, we use Bedford Square. We are arriving at Bedford Square and could see the virtual Bauhaus floating above AA. There are often exhibitions of pavilion in the real world. we have taken it to the virtual world so that users can have a better immersive experience. It's like an open day that brings the real-world experience to the global audience. Okay. Users can then go inside AA and participate in the lives of students. You can see the virtual Bauhaus. And here is our current science, AA lecture hall. Users can enjoy our presentation and learn about DRL's project. They are even available to come inside our real-life studio and participate in project discussion. And And if they have some questions, they can ask AI avatar of our tutors.
Could you tell me a bit about yourself?
Nice to meet you too. I'm Theodore Spyropoulos. I direct the Architectural Association's Design Research Lab Odell in London and co-founded Minima Forms, an experimental art, architecture, and design practice. My work focuses on innovative approaches to architecture and design, exploring how technology and creativity can intersect to create new experiences. If there's anything else you're curious about, feel free to ask.
And after that, they can select the part of Virtual Bauhaus, which part they want to go in front of the screen. This is overview. They can select which parts they want to go. Okay, studio part. And go into the Virtual Bauhaus. Next. For users, the VR can also be used as an access port. When the user uses it in AA, they can directly connect to it. There are AI agents everywhere.
The architectural presentation area. Can you take me there?
Let's head to the architecture presentation area. Here, you can explore weekly reports and get inspired by different groups' ideas and projects. Follow me.
It's too fast. Okay. Next.
So next we will introduce our interaction models more detailedly. For the public area, people can freely join the workshop and there are exhibitions of architecture, fashion and product design, and also a public auditorium. Exhibition is in the main space of public area. It shows the past and present work from our DRL students, products designed by architects, and clothing design from other fashion students. Users are able to freely interact with the models. Now it shows the users is scaling down to the urban design from Schumacher Studio last year. And this is the auditorium. The auditorium in the public area is designed to accommodate various functions, including lectures, performers, etc.
And as the lecture hall space, it serves both the function of information input and output. This versatility indicates that lecture halls are not only places for audience to acquire knowledge, but also space for sharing. And 3-level space was created. The ground level is the spawn area with leisure space, and the second level is the exhibition space. And the lecture space is on the 3rd level. Oh, sorry, our slides need to reopen. Okay, this is a scenario where users' first-person perspective is used. First, we go from the spawn area of the axis. Looking around the space, you can see which lecture is going on. It's a large leisure space to stop and find something curious to go into. Then, see the first ramp. We are coming to the first level. And we could go through the architecture exhibition. Architecture exhibition areas can display the models and show the details. We talked about this in the previous slide. And go ahead. On the right is the exhibition for product design. Product design's exhibition can display a plane, figures, or exhibition boards. Of course, these display spaces can also be replaced by product model booths. And then we can see the fashion design exhibits. Fashion's exhibition booths are each individual display spaces. And next, we go up to the second floor, and the different lectures. The lecture series consists of 2 parts, multiple blocks for the experts and a stepped auditorium for more people. Also, we can come up another ramp, accessing to other lectures. above the lecture space is the extension of the screens formed by applying the Murray effect, which serves to identify the direction of the lectures.
Next is the interaction in studio part. The studio is connected to the lecture hall and has 3 disciplines: architecture and urban design, fashion design, and product design. First is architecture studio. In the architecture studio, users can go to the archive to learn about the project and enjoy the model by zooming in and zooming out to engage in conversation at different scales. Yeah. And they can even enter the model and experience the design of space firsthand. Yeah, something like that. This is a working area where each team has its own space, and when the program is shared and the space of several small teams are merged into one large space, and the model begin shared will be larger and solid. And this is independent team workspace, and in the middle of the workbench is a real-time model of design. When the user approaches to the model, the design process of the project and the construction of the model will be displayed. That means the design is not just the static of the studio, but also exists as a design process. Users can go back in time to see how the design was refined step by step, and the virtual Bauhaus is transformed from 3-dimension to a 4-dimension space. At any time during the process, users can interrupt the playback of the design process and take over the project, modify it according to their own ideas, and find another possibility of project. For better communication, users can grab models, adjust scale, and draw a sketch to experience their idea. Okay, next is a fashion studio with a diamond-shaped workspace separated by a traffic skeleton. In fashion studio, users can experience their initial design ideas by drawing 3D sketch on a mannequin in a separate workspace. Okay, go. After sketching the initial idea, the users can take photo from multiple views to document it. Take photo. When they are returned to their workbench, the photos are displayed. OpenAI can be used to promote more prototypes for inspiration and enlightenment. When the photo is loaded into the Virtual Bauhaus, the users can use the stick to choose which one they want. Yeah, maybe this one. The screen on the right will jump to the model generation website that will create 3D model for us. Just wait a moment, and it will appear on the workbench. Okay, that looks good. The users can pick up the model. Yeah. Pick up the model and go to the fashion show area. Yeah. Resizing the model and put it on the design on the stand. Okay, next. In the fashion show area, users can see their body in front of the mirror and make any pose, which is the link with the real world. They can use a stick to touch the outfit on the stand so that they can quickly change the garments and try different styles. Okay. Next, finally, there is a product design, which differ from the previous studio. The workspace in product studio use triangular elements. Within product design studio, user can use the internet to connect globally. Okay, that means they can get the same technique spots as in the real world, use the website, search for information, and even chat with their friend in the real world. Users can also complete the sketch like that. And when it's finished, it will be transformed into a solid model and appear in the testing area. This is a testing area where users can experience the completed product and leave feedback for the designers to adjust it. Yeah. It's so far, it's very cool. I like it. Next.
So our design research has the clear guideline of the function type, fragment type, social type, morphology, and interaction type. It enables us to explore the possibility of virtual Bauhauses. Firstly, we put our thesis, script of the past presentations as a knowledge base to train our virtual Bauhaus concept AI. And then the research on the fragment type, social type, morphology as a subject reference, adding the final visualization from the interaction type as the style reference, together to train our virtual Bauhaus visual AI. And also, the text-based concept AI can be the prompt for the sound AI. To test, we inquire our model to produce new spaces of sports center that has the similar hierarchy as in our virtual Bauhaus. We see a virtual Bauhaus as design framework. We also use AI to test out the possibility for collaboration. This is the Pompidou in Paris, the fashion designer Virgil, the Bauhaus in Germany, the Hadid, and then the Japanese fashion brand. A virtual Bauhaus approaches people in different ways. We get feedback from our phase one when we are in designing process. We test with our other institutions, and maybe it can be a fun after-class activity or just something interesting to watch. So you're waiting for your feedback as well. Sorry.
Just come up here. If you want to do a catwalk, you can.
I can start, if that's all right. Yeah. Well, I think congratulations. I think, first of all, the presentation flow was really fun to watch. It showed that you guys understood really what it meant, what you were doing. So very engaging, very immersive, very interactive, the way that you're presenting. I think that already shows the depth of your development on not only the skills, but the way that you understand how it is to communicate a space into a metaverse, a virtual space. I think I'm not going to focus on the technicalities that I think are very impressive, but I really want to compliment you on the spatial qualities that you have achieved, right? Because I think it's not easy to find these virtual spaces, and I think you got the right balance of what is has to be virtual, but it still gives us a sense of orientation, of sense of calmness that you could move through the space, but provides this sort of richness of interaction and the discovery that you want to communicate. I think the three vortex that you create as the main driver for the organization principles of the spaces are really exciting. The way that you express them with these sort of immaterial facades, lines of movement and light really become very attractive. And I think that's why it is fun to keep moving up and down and changing from what you call your different programs, because it really becomes engaging and a level of abstraction, but very spatially real to move into it as a virtual space. So I think that to me is one of the best successes that the project has, besides all of the great technical abilities that you have developed. So congratulations, really, really well done. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought this was really cool. So, thanks for opening our eyes to this. I was just saying to Patrick that Trump came out and said he wanted to make education free, college free, by making it virtual and then taxing schools like this to make it happen. And I was just thinking oh wow, that's so depressing to think that our whole college education is going to be done through some user interface, but by making something like this, you've now taken that educational experience to another level. And what I think is really great about this is you're conglomerating all of the software that you would be able to get when you go to university, like how you made that dress. It was kind of oh wow, I could go to this university and then try out all these different softwares within a software and meet other people and make friends. I just think that the whole idea is really cool. And then I thought, you were showing architectural presentations like we're having right now, but because everybody made virtual models, instead of jumping into a fake model, we could have been riding on that algae boat. We could have been in that sand dune going into the earth, or we could have been with the mealworms. I don't know. I'm just saying they're digital, so we could actually go into their digital worlds and see the presentation in a one-to-one experience with the environment, and that would be pretty fantastic. And I think, we have to embrace the way the world is moving into AI designing, into things being digitally made. So in a way, this kind of helps create a studio environment, but also embrace the future as well. And then I had a last point, but I don't remember it. Patrick,
I don't know.
What do you think?
I can do a bit and then maybe you.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I also want to just congratulate for the amount of work that you have done, and it's very impressive. I just want to pick out 2 or 3 points which I think are kind of exciting. In a way, I think it's important to remember that this is day one, and we are really at the very beginning of this whole technology evolving, and so it will also, our relationship with this technology will change over time. But for the time being, I think it's very clever to bring parts of our physical reality as we know it into the virtual reality, because it kind of helps us, make this transition where I think it works really well, where we are here in this replication of this space, and then I can jump to this window, and I can come. It's almost kind of grounding my experience, right? And gives me a bit of okay, I know this space. And then the other thing that I think is really promising is the ability to customize and really in a way almost in the near future, I think at a very individual level. So if I want a bit less movement in the light, or I want a slightly different color palette, then I will be able to customize this on my end the way I perceive that world, right? So on top of what we are seeing, there is actually a high degree of customizability that is also exciting, because it also has the promise to make those spaces more accessible, because I can customize them to my needs, right? And then the last bit I want to pick out that I think you touched on really nicely is the fact that you can actually create a multi-dimensional reality, in the sense that you can go back in time, but we don't all have to be in the same reality. This is a kind of difficult concept to get your head around, but I think the beautiful thing is that we can all be in the same space, but we can have a different interpretation of the same space, depending on our needs and depending on how we want to, or how we function best in that environment. So, but all in all, I think it's really nice because you're giving us the ability to imagine kind of what the next steps could be. And yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, I remember what I was going to say. So I thought what was really impressive about this presentation, because I'm always thinking commercially, is you built things that I think are sellable entities. Like this guy was like designing his house and then could go back and forge. Imagine if we could give that tool to our clients. Like that platform in itself, that was like a microsecond of this whole presentation, is a sellable entity in itself. And same with the dressmaking. I think what's amazing about like technology, even down to social media, is the ability to scale and have a big audience and to sell. You couldn't have made a bespoke dress before because you wouldn't have had the quantity to make that. But with digital technology, you can now bespoke a dress, make it, market it, have like in a digital world, have thousands of people look in it, travel to it from Germany and all those other places. And so I think technology is a perpetuation for young people to have a voice and a market, and now you've given them a place to not only make but also sell things, so that student ideas don't have to be ideas. You can actually start to like sell it, and it's something I know Patrick is doing with his metaverse, is how we can sell things in the metaverse. I mean, it's a real thing, and so even though it's like fake, it's also real, and it's the future. So I think that's really cool.
Sorry, I forgot one little thing. That is when you were showing the models in the studio, I think the beautiful thing is, even for this studio here, that you can really start to have an archive of all the code, all the objects. Nobody has to remodel. You can start at a certain point and add to it, and all the interactivity, right, is something that the next generation of students that come through this course can benefit from if there's a centralized library, right? And in a way, as a first use case, right, this is a really strong one to just collect, and everything that has been produced or is getting produced here, and allowing the next generation to kind of build on top of it, so it kind of can iterate faster. Sorry.
Democratizing education.
Mike? You want me to talk? Yeah. Oh, I see. I think architecturally it's very interesting. It allows you to move and swoop and zoom and so on. One wonders about people who crave for a vertical wall. And for me as an old person, I'm amazed that people don't trip over steps in here. And I think it's a virtual world. Why on earth has it got 3 levels in it? You can have it all. Why would you go upstairs in the vertical world? You go upstairs because generally there's not enough space on the ground floor. But in this world, there should be enough space to do whatever you want on the ground floor. So why is it 3-dimensional? Having accepted that it is, I love the swirl above the AA, by the way. I think there are all sorts of issues of engagement, and I think you successfully pulled people into it, successfully begin to engage with everybody, and so on. And despite the usual fashion references and so on, which I think are always a bit dry, I think it's successful at that level. And it's sort of slightly bluey white everywhere, which means it would be tricky for me, probably.
Can I jump in? All right. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just adding something about maybe the relationship between the virtual world and the material or physical one. And I mean, initially when I read about the Virtual Bauhaus, I thought it was a bit of an oxymoron in itself, because, in my kind of mind, the Bauhaus signifies like learning through your hands, through material and prototypes and crafts, right? So, but then I was kind of looking at your really engaging and to be honest, fun presentation, and kind of occurred to me that maybe there is also another dimension to this in terms of how this can bring experimentation in the real world to another level, right? And I mean, I just relate it back to what I do, and I was talking before. We just opened this space in Torino where we try to grow furniture. No, so furniture not manufactured but grow. So it's a biodesign lab essentially. And obviously when you do that, you kind of develop protocols and there is a lot of research going in, and then obviously at some point you manage to successfully grow something, and once you have that, it comes the problem of how do you scale it, right? I mean, in the end, you don't necessarily want to start growing thousands of stools, for example, in your lab, when in fact you could use local material and resources, and in a sense it could be quite simple to do it anywhere once you know how to do it, right? So it seems to me that there is a scenario here which maybe could be also explored more, where the possibility to share through the Virtual Bauhaus protocols for biodesign, for example, then could enable people that are everywhere in the world, where perhaps even certain type of research are hard to access, to effectively use local resources and make wonderful things with them. So in a sense, it kind of becomes a way of using the virtual to stimulate this what was the kind of original mission of the Bauhaus in terms of for example, maximizing the use of resources rather than mass producing stuff. You can locally produce stuff using simple basic materials, but the know-how is shared and it's developed through a platform like this, for example. And I think that could be quite an interesting scenario that I hadn't thought about before, but it kind of begins to form in my mind when I was looking at your presentation. But other than that, it was really engaging. So thank you for that.
Well, let me say first that I'm fascinated by the studio proposition. Okay, so that should not be understood as a critique, but more like my own reflection on the topic that I want to share, because I think you've done amazing work. So it goes without saying, but I should say it. But what strikes me now, because it's the third time that I see one of the studio projects, is that I kind of fear in some ways, or I challenge, that there are some very normative conventions that are shown in these models. So the objectified women in the fashion catwalks, the men dressed up, all perfect, and in this hyper-technological world. And I don't know, there is some conventions that I really, to the point of being scary, that I would like very much that this kind of space is so free and so unregulated, endless possibilities, that I think it would necessarily be an opportunity to question all the conventions that we have in our physical world as we know it. So I would challenge you, I would encourage you to think beyond this level, let's say.
Okay, then thank you very much for this presentation. It is, let's say, trendy presentation at the moment, and very actual topic, metaverse. But I find that something for me, it is very fascinating in this project, and I think it is about the conception you start. You start from cloud. And I had in mind one book which is very important for theory of architecture and theory of paintings, and I suggest to Patrick to read that book. It is Theory of the Cloud, Iber Damisch book. If you didn't read, please do that, because it is very important book for painting, and it can help you to stabilize your theory of tectonism. And Iber Damisch, in that book, show us one thesis, that the cloud is only a form or shape that is not possible to drawing with perspective. And it is not possible because a cloud is in one moment fragments, in one moment it is the shape, in one moment it is moving structure, in one moment it is form, but it is not possible to drawing possible in the right way using Brunelleschi perspective, Descartes system, etc., etc. The cloud is very close to Polk paintings, and still it is open question how we produce architectural space which is constantly in movement, constantly change their own structure. So for me, the most value and beautiful things is you start with a cloud, but somehow that your cloud stay not changeable. We always saw that interior design, interior structure change in the moment, and I think that new layer of the project can be open the cloud as a moving structure and interact with that three levels of your space. And the next comment, I hope that you will have possibility to go to Bauhaus in Weimar. In
Weimar, would you go to the one in Dessau?
Yeah, oh, super. Because I think that with in this position, what actually Marta mentioned that we still need something in this kind of design, something very sophisticated. I know that it is the problem of software or programming, and still it is very difficult if you have in mind what I'm thinking about. But connected with Bauhaus, we really expected some very fragile design, very sophisticated, very fine. So, okay, it is good work, and for me, that is two layers of this project. First, you intuitively choose the cloud, but it is a good choice for you to develop this idea. And please think about next level of your project and continue to work on this experimental position of the space. Thank you.
Wow, guys, you really kill me. I mean, positively. I mean, I love it. It's so rewarding to sit here and watch this, and I see, wow, my God. I mean, you've pushed the metaverse space, global metaverse project forward by 3 or 5 steps. I'm serious, because we're trying, I think we're in the frontier with Metatopia, and you show the next steps which need to go. And, you know, the metaverse thing, this bubbled up, 2 years ago into a huge kind of inflation and collapsed and seemed to be disappearing, billions lost. But it was like the internet bubble. And then the internet happened the next few years, and it's kind of took over everything. And that's exactly what I know about the metaverse. And this makes it tangible. So I think you accelerated the network effects to draw the pull that we happening by at least half a decade. So thank you for that. But I find it compelling, and I think we have already something going. If I invite everybody to look into Metatopia, we have great shows, we have great panel discussions, we have, but this is another level. This is not just an exhibition space, it's an engagement space, and the interaction with virtual and physical spaces and physical spaces having windows into virtual worlds and archives. I mean, that's where we started 3 years ago with the cyber urban integration project. Then I went metaverse urbanism, then I went physical urbanism, because I wanted to show that these things are connected. And when I do urbanism lectures, I do show metaverse urbanism. There's so much connection and direct competition, and one could substitute the other, but one can also enhance the other, because every single organization on this planet that have a website or venue or only a website will have virtual spaces, and they will aggregate in virtual buildings, to have these co-location synergies to connect up, and they will end up in virtual cities. And I'm very, very convinced of this. There will be multiple of these cities, but we are doing the kind of ecosystem for the design disciplines, including schools, magazines, shows, curations, etc. And look, maybe I shouldn't talk more, but I'm just thank you, guys. And by the way, the two other teams also fabulously pushed forward. And there's some metaverse people in the room, and I think that's true what I'm saying. It will happen, and you are helping accelerating history.
I mean, we could clap. But I think that would be... Sorry, the metaverse gods got to my microphone and cut me off before I could finish it. But that would be quite too nice. No, I think you guys have done a very good job, and you've come a long way. And I think the things that I appreciate from the presentation was of the teams, you spoke to the Bauhaus and the framework. And I think the interpretation of using how people use digital media, I think for me, is the part that potentially is a way that we can maybe challenge some of the things that also Marta is bringing up. And the concept of the cloud, I think, is also something that is not just a formal one, but I think it's a very intellectual framework to think. And this version of the project is much more cloud-like than it was before. So I think you've already... not only accepted it, just saw it more than what, historically was part of its generation. But the reason I'm saying about the digital media is I think the way to offset, let's say, this kind of generic representation is to make it more human. And in the moments where, I think you guys took some liberty of adding a couple of gray hairs to my beard. The reality of that is that part of the digital world isn't talked about a lot, but I think that's where people actually see themselves almost as a form of digital mirror in these kind of environments. It's not just that you're mapping these worlds. I think we relate to this context, and in a sense, yesterday we were talking about memory palaces, all these other kinds of ways of thinking about things, and I think that by putting this all together, even to also acknowledge the contribution that AI will have, there will be a need to humanize these things. And what that means is not going to be like one solution space to this kind of digital tsunami that's coming, but it's also a re-identification of what we mean to be human. These kind of things, like showing all of these different people and everything, that's a community that's expanding. When you guys talked about public, and the children in the space, I mean, it's very difficult to not see a young child today without an iPhone or a tablet. The way that digital media is being consumed, in a strange way, is actually a very passive observation. And so if there is a way to make that more active, as an active participant, I think it does open up some possibilities that there doesn't have to be this dystopic future where at the end of the day we're passively just observing this continuous entertainment onslaught, but that we could start to use these things as tools. We can start to synergize and communicate and use all of the things that we actually have to create assets that, from my perspective, are not about selling, but are more about participating and learning. And I think these other aspects, are ways that I think you have to speak to from what you've learned. Like, there's an interpretation of the videos because of the way that it's made, that somebody could sort of project certain assumptions. Seeing you guys kind of evolve this stuff, I was happy to see that in the presentation you brought back that idea of different schools, different audiences. The thing is that it's not able to see how they are actively in that space. Or, for example, how the cloud could actually be that database. Instead of the representation, it is actually the knowledge. That I can pull these kind of voxels and actually have access to it. But I think in terms of, let's say, the state of the art of metaverse, I do think you're bringing these different worlds together in a UX kind of conversation, which I think is important, and it starts to bring up some experience. But I also think, you know, you're in a privileged position to be able to start to claim a certain motivation for this kind of learning environment. If you don't, other people will. They'll say, well, maybe the DRL doesn't need a space. We could just do this all online. But it's kind of like watching a movie by yourself on your sofa, or going to the cinema, or going to a public park and sharing and that kind of thing. We need to have more complex and more hybrid experiences, and I think it's important also for your generation to be able to speak to what that may be and communicate what that may be like. Because some of us and some of the people in your jury didn't grow up with an iPad in their hand, you know, didn't have access to all this information that in many cases destabilizes people, their identity, who they are, what's this for, how do they participate. And I think you guys can look at your project for what it is, and then start to really consider how you can engage in this world. Because I do think you had some early motivations, which was important that you presented them in this way. And I feel like if you can continue the project in your own way, I think those things, you have an opportunity, I think, to do something that a lot of people aren't doing. If you're seduced by this, and I'm not taking away from Patrick's enthusiasm, I'm just suggesting that this is the world as we know, and there's a future world, and it's a very good world. It's integrating all of these things, and you can see that, you know, somebody could look at that and be like, oh yeah, of course, you know, 2D, web page, HTML, blah, blah, blah. Now we have 3D, virtual, immersive environment, but yet we're still going to be sitting at home on a laptop. And we're going to have this kind of experience which is very much disconnected from our life. Like we are somehow wanting something because we feel that that desire is not actually even our own. It's a desire that's somehow sold to us. So I feel like in your team, you've brought this all together, I think, in a very coherent way. But I quite like some of those early motivations of the different schools, the children's school in China, the AA, which is a very privileged place, very privileged. And I think sometimes we don't recognize that. And so I feel like the more that you can talk about that complexity, I think the more engaged, I think, and receptive you'll have many different audiences to kind of help and shape a project for this. You know, the project here with the metaverse and Patrick, it will continue. I think you throw a certain bar on the table in terms of that world, but I also think you spoke about a couple of things that maybe aren't so present. That's why I just tried to bring them out, because in some way I was privileged to see that as part of the process of seeing all of these projects, you know, bi-weekly. So I think that there's a lot to take from it. I think you guys have come a long way, and you deserve both the praise and I think the opportunity to look at this work anew. And I think you should use that moment of self-reflection for your own, you know, next steps. You can be consumed by a tech company easily, for sure. Marketing companies would look at this and be great. But I think you guys have a lot more value. And I'm not trying to poo-poo that world, but to be honest with you, I don't think that that's the goal of the things that we do here. So my feeling is that you can be really adventurous in what you're doing, highly designed, and at the same time, I think also really be motivated by the learning and the motivation of what a new Bauhaus would be. Not craft sensibility. This is at the scale that's unimaginable if this was really to happen. And that comes with responsibility. So I think you're in a position to at least question it. Anyhow, we have one more team, so we're going to congratulate you. And